Welcome into the Cowboys Report. I am Tom Downey. We've got Jane Slater back as well. We've got quite a bit to discuss because, yikes. Let's begin with the postmortem of the playoff. I'm going to call it disaster. I'm going to call it what it is. Cowboys-Niners. Jane, I'd love to hear some overall thoughts from you on the thing that makes me sad still.
Full-on implosion. And after watching the game last week, wouldn't you have liked, as a Cowboys fan, to have seen them match up against the Cardinals once again? Although, after the performance that we saw on Sunday, I don't even know if the Cowboys could have beat the Cardinals, especially given what we saw, 3 weeks ago? The weeks are running together for me. We could do an hour-long show on this, but it starts off by my former producer, the Boys and Girls show. He's my producer for NFL Network. We're sitting there, and we said, is Leighton Vander Esch's name spelt wrong on his jersey? Yep. That was interesting to me. Secondly, you allow that offense from the 49ers to have 6 first downs on a 7-play drive, imposing their will.
Didn't even get to a third down.
No, we talked about them imposing their will and the physicality of this team leading up to it. They showed it. It was 14 penalties. The most heavily penalized team in the regular season continues the theme, and they were costly penalties, and we kept saying that was going to affect the game. And the fact that you were relying on Greg the Leg to score your points, and he was the only reliable piece of the puzzle heading into this one.
He played well.
Negligible. And then I just thought, for them to blame the refs at the end after you decide to call a QB draw with 14 seconds left, you say that you've instructed your players to hand the ball to the officials. They don't. And then you whine about it afterwards was perplexing to me. Mike Robb on Good Morning Football, one of my colleagues at NFL Network, said he kept hearing in all of his meetings, you do not call a quarterback draw unless you have at least 16 seconds. I know you guys had heard 18. Bottom line is 14 was a gamble. And so I just think when you're looking at, I said this week, it wasn't what Jerry said after the game, it's what he didn't say that stood out to me. They feel like they've got the personnel, they're just not getting the most out of it. And we heard that when they talked about Jason Garrett's job security and when they talked about Mike Nolan and Jim Tomsula. So it is going to be interesting to see what they do here.
We're going to talk about that head coach here in a little bit. I did want to briefly ask you about the quarterback, Dak Prescott. I thought that was his worst playoff game of his career.
I don't know what's going on with him, because it wasn't like he was under duress the whole game, right? I don't think the offensive line played great, but I didn't feel like he was necessarily under duress. I don't know if it's play calling. I don't know if he's checking out at the line of scrimmage. I don't know if there was really something off with the calf, with the foot, with the arm this year. These are the type of things that we typically hear about in the offseason, right? Like we hear about these players playing through injuries, and we always find ourselves going, wait, we didn't know that. But it just did feel like things were off. But it didn't help when your receivers like CeeDee Lamb aren't catching the ball when they absolutely have to, or you're throwing to Cedric Wilson into the sun. I mean, there were so many things that just compounded this. I don't think you can put it all on Dak, but it was Murphy's Law last year, and it was Murphy's Law in this game. Anything that could go wrong did.
And we'll come back to this too. The whole offense, ever since Dak came back, they just didn't look right. We'll come back to that. We're going to talk Mike McCarthy here in a minute too, because confidence level in Dallas moving forward here for next season. I'm very curious how you guys vote on this one. Scale it for me 1 to 10. This is the pinned comment, so the ad break comes here while you're watching on YouTube. Head down there and let me know what you think.
Tom, why don't you ask your confidence level if Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady retire this offseason?
Yeah,
then the number might go up a little bit.
I feel better about that all of a sudden when the two best quarterbacks in the NFC aren't there. Let's talk about Mike McCarthy here. You mentioned Jerry after the game. He was mad. He was very upset.
Yeah.
Is there any chance, in light of Jerry delaying his interview today, which I know you've got thoughts on that too, any chance McCarthy is not the head coach next year?
Yeah, for those of you who are not familiar, Tuesdays are typically Jerry Jones's chance to talk on 105.3 The Fan. He canceled that interview, but before we started getting our tongues wagging, it is John Madden's funeral, I was told, in San Francisco, and Rich Dalrymple, the head of communications, Jerry flew out there on his private jet, so they're there for that. Although I would submit you could reschedule it or potentially find a way to get on the phone. I just felt like he did this with the Jason Garrett deal. In other words, he needed a few days to think. It just all feels not too dissimilar from when they lost to the Rams in LA, Jerry was inconsolable, I was told. It was deathly quiet on the flight home. People knew not to talk to him, and he wanted to make a change at the head coaching position then. And of course, then he waited a year, and I was told he sort of regretted that. We kind of saw this with Mike Nolan and Jim Tomsula too. And so just because Stephen Jones went on the radio and said they're confident in him,
which was a weird question to ask, by the way.
Right?
I thought the way it was phrased.
And even though Mike McCarthy was confident, so was Jason. So I think anything can happen. I think we're going to be keeping an eye on Dan Quinn and what that's looking like. I've been told he's very, very close to making an announcement on this Broncos gig as a front runner. And I was told that if offered the job, he would likely stay in Dallas. But I don't know if Dan Quinn's that type of guy, though, too. Like, he doesn't seem like he just doesn't. He is such a. I can't describe his personality and the way that people talk about him. But I find it hard to believe. I don't know if you've ever been in this situation before, Tom. I know I have, where someone's come to you, one of your bosses, and said, "Would you like this job?" And if you're friends with someone, I've said, "Nope, I'm good here." I just don't know if Mike is also, or if Dan's also that type of guy. So I just think there's a lot of moving parts here.
Yeah.
And I think there's some other calls to be made.
Other calls to be made, and I can already see the commenter saying, Sean Payton, is there a chance?
The Cowboys get Sean paid every single year. I feel like at some point it's inevitable that's going to happen, and you can't help but wonder what Sean would do with some of these offensive pieces, particularly guys like Cedric Wilson and Malik Turner that you could really develop. And to think that he got his New Orleans Saints team in a position to get into the playoffs, won the game they needed to, but then the other scenarios didn't fall their way. But they went through 4 quarterbacks this year, were decimated on their offensive line, didn't have their wide receiver, didn't have both of their running backs in one game, and Alvin Kamara from both. So Jerry's had a love affair with Sean for a long time. He's deferred to Sean at times about his thoughts on this team. And there is a possibility that Sean could get out of his deal. But I think Sean is going to be highly coveted this offseason by teams like the Raiders, the Seahawks, the Bears, the Giants. Giants, of course, where he started his career. So he's got a great relationship with them. It's a big market. And then there's a lot of talk about media. Does Amazon make a play for them as they're trying to build this dream team? So he's got a lot of options. Mm-hmm. We'll see what happens with Sean. It's just, it's like death and taxes. We talk about there. Sean every time there's a question about this coaching search, but I feel like I'm dominating the conversation here, Tom, but I've just got so much to say about all this.
You got the inside info, so I got no issues there.
I would just say that if you're Jerry, it's hard not to think you made a move that you've never made before, and that was getting rid of your defensive coordinator after 1 year. Mm-hmm. And look what that change did for your defense. And do you trust this team if Dan Quinn leaves and you have to go find another defensive coordinator? Now, there's a lot of thought that Joe Witt would do a nice job there and they could promote him. And then there's been talk about Ben McAdoo going to offensive coordinator if Kellen leaves. I'd be curious to know what people think about that. Yeah. But this team is not going to look the same next year.
Okay. So what do you guys want to do with Mike McCarthy? F for fire, K for keep. Let me know in the comments section. While you're down there, check out the link, chatsports.com/Cowboys hoodie, available for today only. 30% off at chatsports.com/Cowboys hoodie. Tons of different varieties, colors, styles, etc. There's something for you guys. That deal is a limited time only, so get going. If you're watching this on a Wednesday or something, it still might be there. Sometimes they extend them, but they got the ticking timer on there. Chatsports.com/Cowboys hoodie. Yeah, you think it's only 30 for now. Let's talk Dan Quinn a little bit more in depth here. Is he going to get the Denver job? And I also want to throw this out there too. The Cowboys haven't done, in the event maybe you want to promote Dan Quinn, they haven't done a real head coaching search though since Wade Phillips, and that kind of worries me. Because I don't think Quinn was a great head coach in Atlanta. I think I would almost maybe rather have him than Mike McCarthy right now at the current moment. But is it a scenario of he's your head coach or he's gone?
Yeah.
Okay.
These head coaching jobs don't come around all the time, right? And there are so many. When you're at the top of the list, I look at guys in the past who could have moved on. And then those jobs aren't necessarily, look at Kellen Moore. He could have left last year, I guess, potentially gone to Boise State and he didn't. And then he has his playoff game, and I just wonder if his stock has dropped a little bit as a result of the playoff game. And so I do think you have to seize. I thought it was very interesting that after the game, though, unprompted, so many of these players talked about wanting Dan Quinn to stay. And so I know what he's done for this team. I would submit that they would not have used Micah Parsons the way that they did if Dan Quinn was not their coach.
I
you
agree.
wouldn't have gotten as much out of Anthony Brown if you didn't have Dan Quinn as your coach.
J-Ron Curse.
J-Ron Curse was my next one that I was going to say, and Keanu Neal bringing him here. And so they did a lot of good things with Dan Quinn, and I just don't think that you're going to see the same ROI with maybe another coach out there. And I just think the way that he gets these guys to believe, the way that he coached this team against the Saints in New Orleans at the Superdome when Mike McCarthy was out with COVID. And I just want to be careful here. I don't want to make this seem like I'm anti-Mike McCarthy. I'm not.
Yeah.
I just, being around this team, it just really stands out the impact that Dan Quinn has made in his very, very short time here.
And I think that's why he's, I think, the most coveted head coach candidate right now. Everybody wants to interview Dan Quinn. So would you guys make Quinn the head coach, really based on his 1 year in Dallas? That's what's going to get the job. Yeah, he had the run with the Falcons, ended pretty poorly. Would you make him the head coach? Y for yes, N for no. We'll keep you guys covered on everything going on the Cowboys this offseason, which it's going to be interesting, as it seemingly always is. So subscribe today. Free videos right here at the Dallas Cowboys Report. If you're watching on Facebook or somewhere else, it's youtube.com/CowboysTV.